Good evening. Welcome to PoliticIt podcast. Tonight we have Mike Schultz. Mike is the House Majority Leader, and it's nice to have you.
Well,
I mean, we've been talking about this for a while, but it's nice to finally get you here.
We have been about a year, so I'm
Yeah.
grateful. Thanks for the opportunity to have me.
Yeah. So let's just to begin with, let's talk a little bit about you. I know, you know, you have a pretty wide following, but you know, some people may not know you.
Yeah, everybody that's mad at me, they follow me.
So you grew up here.
I grew up in Hooper my whole life. I've lived in Hooper my whole life. Weber County resident, yes.
So is that Roy High School?
That would be Roy High School. It was before Fremont was built. Of course, that ages me a little bit.
Yeah.
Later, but it was before Fremont High School was built.
So do the kids from Hooper now go to Fremont?
Yeah, mostly. Some go to Roy, but most of them still go to Hooper.
And so
Most of them still go to Fremont.
Tell me a little bit about your background, what you do.
So I started in the construction industry, building houses, and so that's mostly what I do, is build houses for people. I don't do as much of that today as I used to do. My passion is ranching, cattle ranching, farming, agriculture, and so that's what I spend most of my time doing, is working on the ranches and just being in the outdoors. I love the outdoors. It's part of the reason why I love Utah.
Yeah, that's cool. So where's most of your ranch at?
So it's kind of all over Utah. Some of it's in Summit County, some of it's in Morgan County, some of it's in Juab County, some of it's in Box Elder County. So we have our summer range, which we take the cattle. We have about 1,200 head of mother cows. That's in Morgan and Summit counties. And then the winter range is in Juab and Box Elder County.
Wow. And so you also are a landlord too, right?
Yes. So I have some apartments. Yes. So we've over the years we've built some apartments and we keep those apartments, and
That's
so
cool.
A little bit of everything.
Yeah. So what do you like to do outside of work? I know you're a workaholic, but
You know what? I keep enough jobs in front of me that if I get tired of one job, I just move to the next job. And so that's what I love doing the most is working. But again, you know, having the opportunity to work on one of the ranches and go out in Mother Nature and is really what I love the most.
that's cool. You're a big hunter too, right?
A big outdoorsman, yes, big outdoorsman. I love the wildlife in the state of Utah, particularly mule deer. I'm a big mule deer fan.
Oh, really?
Elk is nice. I mean, I love elk, but
So do you raise any of them,
so
like elk or?
well, you know, we in the wild. You
Yeah.
know, we do our best. We go out and do habitat projects all across the ranch. We really try to increase the forage that's available for them. We try to manage our cattle herd in a way that would benefit the wildlife as a whole, and we do. I mean, we try not to shoot the younger ones. We let them grow up, and you know, we have a really strict management plan on you know, the age, class, and we follow it pretty strict. Not as strict as some do around the state, but we're up there and as far as how we manage.
So let's go to the House now. So you're the House Majority Leader.
House Majority.
And so what does that entail for people who aren't familiar with that?
So the House Majority Leader is right below the Speaker. The Speaker's over the whole body. The House Majority Leader is just over the Majority Caucus, and we've got a fantastic caucus. I mean, you've worked with most of them, John. A lot of people were really worried about the new class, incoming freshman class, but I'll tell you what.
Very conservative.
They are, and they stood up, and they were amazing. Like, they did a really good job this year, and they added a whole lot of benefit to our caucus, and probably more so than I've seen in most years.
Well, I know Katie Hall had
Yes.
some major bills, right?
Yes.
She did the
She ran
gender surgery bill and
Yeah.
did a brilliant job, I thought.
Had a great bail reform bill that pulled back some of the changes that was made around bail reform and the catch and release policies that some of these district attorneys and county attorneys are using, and pulled some of those things back. And she had a great session.
Yeah, I was really impressed with the way she operated.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. We got a more conservative class than we had before, right?
We needed it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we needed it.
That's nice.
It was really interesting because one of the things I noticed this year with our caucus is, in the past few years, several years, I'm going to say, there's always been a little bit of fear with our caucus, and not knowing whether or not they're doing the right thing, and just scared what the press might say, or scared to be hit from the left or whatever it is. But this year there was no fear. I just watched them stand up, lead out, and we got some amazing things accomplished, both in the House and the Senate. It was a good year for conservatives in the state of Utah.
Yeah, I thought it was amazing, actually, just watching them and seeing the kinds of things that they were pushing. I mean, Tim Jimenez had a CRT bill.
Yes.
A
lot of people didn't think he'd get that passed.
Yeah,
he did.
He did an amazing job, actually, and I love the way he approached it. And he pulled a lot of people over to that, and that's I guess that's something I have a real passion for. I mean, I've been working on that since I was in there, and and first year he pulls it off.
Well, and he went by the "don't let the pursuit of perfection be the enemy good." He got a really good bill passed. I think there, if you and I or him had full say of what we like that bill would probably be a little bit different. But we got to get 38, 15, and 1, 38 in the House, 15 in the Senate, and get the governor to sign it, or 50 and 20. And so going through that process, you have to have a little bit of give and take. He did a marvelous job and really made a dramatic difference inside the education community, and holding them accountable and doing away with the CRT stuff.
Yeah, I like what you guys have done with the House Education Committee. I was really delighted with that, and we got some major legislation passed. Who'd have thought that we had this this school choice bill?
Yeah, first state in the nation to pass a school choice bill with a 2/3 supermajority on both the House and the Senate.
Yeah, that was amazing.
It was amazing.
Yeah,
but for us, I don't know how it was in the Senate, but for us. In the House, and it goes back to what I mentioned earlier. It's that freshman class not being afraid of the teachers union, not being afraid of what the media might say, just doing what's right for the parents and the kids of this state.
Right. Yeah, I thought that was really amazing.
Because the year before we ran that and we tried to push it, pretty much the same bill, a little bit different, pretty much the same bill. We got 22 votes in the House. Failed. This past year, 54 votes, super majority.
Yeah, that was really nice. And I know in your leadership group you've got a new member there with Carrie Ann, right?
She has been fantastic. In fact, I was talking with the speaker the other day about her, and she really let out on a lot of good, tough issues, and helped bring our body together to try to get them passed. She did a fantastic job. Yeah,
I thought the mix of her with these new freshmen worked out really well.
Yes, did.
And so, and that was kind of a surprise. Yeah. She wasn't the projected winner, I don't think. And
Well, there's a couple of us that knew she would be one of the top contenders.
Yeah.
And she did. She pulled it off.
Yeah, I've loved working with her.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some of the other legislation that.
Where do you want to start, John?
Well,
I got a whole list of some really awesome conservative stuff that made.
Let's talk water to begin with, because that's a major deal, and you're a leader in that area, and understand it from the agricultural perspective, and so what happened that you were really happy about?
Well, let me kind of set the stage a little bit, John, if I may, because I think you have to go back for water policy in the state of Utah is very complicated, and as it is all across the West, right? I mean, Utah's the second driest state in the nation. The main problem that we have over the years is we have on paper too many water rights to meet. I mean, we have more water rights on paper than we actually have wet water available, and a lot of that's for a whole host of different reasons, but you go back to like the 80s, and they were going through the spells like which we went through now, except for they went through like 5 or 6 years in a row of something similar to what we're going through right now with all the water. Well, the Great Salt Lake was overflowing. We had to put pumps in to pump so that Hooper didn't get flooded. I remember that very vividly growing up in Hooper. But at that point in time, there was a whole bunch of water rights issued. Farms were expanded, agriculture was expanded, and so, water rights were given away based off of having more water than what we needed.
Right.
Well, now that we enter the time of drought and even into a normal weather cycle, we still have issued, the state of Utah in years past, mainly through the 80s, issued more water than what's available. And so now how do we solve that problem? And the lake, Great Salt Lake, was always left at the end of the line. Like if water got to the Great Salt Lake, it was perceived as wasted. Well, now we know that, there's a stupid study that came out of BYU from some professor that was just garbage. Said the Great Salt Lake's going to dry up in 5 years. Well, that type of doom and gloom is terrible. Like, that's not even accurate, for one.
Right.
And it makes it harder what we're trying to do. You know what I mean? But the real problem, and this is what is really what we were facing this summer, is once you hit 19% salinity, the ecosystem starts to go downhill. Well, at a really fast pace.
Right.
Okay. And once you hit 21%, you start to lose the whole ecosystem. We hit 18.6% salinity in the Great Salt Lake this summer. It became like a panic type mode because the feds own most of the water in the state of Utah and all the reservoirs through the Bureau of Reclamation. We get to lease that water back from the Bureau of Reclamation. But if we get into an endangered species type thing with the brine shrimp or the brine flies, more importantly, probably the brine flies, then the feds are going to be coming in here and dictating water policy to the state of Utah. So that is where we've really tried to find a balance. What can we do to guarantee get some water to the lake so that we don't hit that salinity tipping point ever again? And so, agricultural optimization, helping farmers and ranchers become more efficient with the water that they use, and then that water that they save can be in the streams and end up going down and being into the system and into the Great Salt Lake. It's a matching program where the farmers and ranchers have to pay 50%. That's some low-hanging fruit that we did.
Right.
Some other things, some berm management type things between the North Arm, South Arm, and maybe even adding some additional berms. Whole bunch of different things. It was a big year for water.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing how that worked out. And, I guess even more amazing is the water that we have now, right?
Yeah.
Record snowfall. All of the resorts are at record levels for the depth of the snow up there, and then it keeps coming down.
We're going to be in a flooding situation here in a matter of weeks.
Yeah,
weeks. We're going to be flooding.
people kind of laughed when Governor Cox wanted to put some money in the budget for the to refurbish the pumps, but we may need them, right?
That would be a good problem to have, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Well, it'd be nice to to get the lake filled up so that we're out of the crisis mode.
There's a balance there. We've got to find that balance. I think the air quality stuff is obviously, we should always be concerned about the dust and different things that blow around. And not only is it bad for our health, but when the dust blows, it blows that dust up on our mountains. And if you look later in the year, that snow starts to turn brown. Right. And what it does is it tracks the sun. When anything darker obviously attracts the sun and the heat more, which causes our snow melt to melt faster, which causes a whole other set of problems. And so it's more than just the air that we breathe. Yeah. There's a whole sort of other things that we need to be thinking about. And again,
I guess the major concern too was if we didn't get the water and we got that salinity level up even higher, that's where we'd start having real problems.
Well, and that's where we have really got to work hard to find a good balance. That's what we can no longer leave the Great Salt Lake in the rearview mirror and say it's not. If water gets to the Great Salt Lake, it's wasted. But unfortunately, that's how water rights have been issued throughout the state of Utah for a century now, over a century.
Well, I know you and the speaker really led out on that water policy, which is great. Hey, let's take a break and we'll come right back. Okay. Welcome back to PoliticIt podcast. We're here with Mike Schultz and House Majority Leader, And let's talk a little bit about some of the legislation that you're proud of. You know, we did some stuff with the judicial system, right?
I mean, this year, I mean, you look back again, and I said at the first of the show, and I can't, for conservatives in the state of Utah, this was the best year that I've been around. So this is my 9th session, and this was the greatest year. Whether you talk tax cuts, election integrity, energy issues, transgender issues. I mean, judicial nominations. I mean, a whole list. But let's talk about whichever ones you want to.
Let's talk about that.
That was a bill that you guys started in the Senate. Senator Colmore started that bill, and it went out to change the way we nominate judges in the state of Utah. It's no surprise, I think, to most people on your podcast and learning that we have a very left-leaning judicial system in the state of Utah. Probably the biggest reason for that is the way our justices and judges are nominated. The way that it's nominated, it basically lets the attorneys that are left-leaning kind of control that process. We changed that. Senator Kirk Colmore set out. He changed that process to where now we can have some more conservative justices nominated and judges nominated for the governor and then for the Senate to confirm. And I will say, give the Senate credit the last couple of years because you guys have really pushed back on some of these nominations that have came forward and said no. I mean, I know one in particular, he said, no, we're not going to nominate that person.
Right.
And approve that nominee from the governor. So
well, there certainly was talk in the Senate and saying, look, this is our responsibility. Yes. We need to start paying attention to this.
So that'll take a few years in order for that to kick in and actually get those more conservative justices appointed. But boy, I'll tell you what, it'll make a difference, a big difference for the state long term.
Yeah, that's really great that we did that.
Yeah.
I know we're going to pay more attention to the trustees now at the universities. I think it's time to follow DeSantis's lead and really take back our universities.
Oh yeah,
because we have the same difficulty there, right?
Yeah. Oh, even worse. I mean, I think it's worse, to be honest with you. We've got to get that under control. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Some universities are better than others, but we've got to take that back and get under control.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the pendulum swung too far, and we need to bring it back.
Well, I think most of us were asleep at the wheel and didn't even recognize how far the pendulum had swung.
Yeah, that's something that I've taken a personal interest in because my involvement in higher ed. I mean, I was a professor at Ole Miss and then started a software company, and when I came back to Utah and retired, I went back to the university, and it surprised me how far that pendulum had swung. So
the stories you hear just makes you sick. So we need to take it back. We will. I'm confident we'll take it back.
Yeah, I've been really pleased with the support in both the Senate and the House on those issues, and I think people are aware of them.
Yeah.
Related to that just a little bit is these ESG scores.
Yes,
that was kind of a record thing for us too.
John, when I first heard about ESG, Environmental Social Government Score, I thought there's no way that is not, and then to see it imposed and used like similar to a credit score, that's hogwash. That would never happen. Oh my heck! 2 years later, it's like here, and it's like, oh, whoa, it is. It was for real. And so no, we did. I think we passed 4 bills this year. I think 2 of them started in the Senate, 2 of them started in the House. We passed four bills. We're doing our very best to make sure that stuff does not end up in Utah.
Right. Well, and I like the way it was handled because I think originally we may have had upwards of 40 bills.
Yeah.
Right, and I like the way people got together and said, "Look, let's address the major issues and let's combine this stuff into 4 separate bills." And I really like the way people came together on that.
So I'm not sure who led it. I think it was Chris Wilson. I think that led it in the Senate.
Well, Chris certainly had some of the bills. Yeah.
And Jeff Moss from the House, he led that on the House, did a great job as far as the House's perspective. And I'm not sure who led it on the Senate
I know.
side.
I know Jeff was really key to the education policy and stuff too.
Yes, he was.
It's great to have someone like him who has that background, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So what were some of the other highlights? You saw energy, for instance. There was some interesting things that happened there.
Well, and then as soon as we get out of session, we knew it was coming. That's why we've had a real big focus. But the EPA comes out with the ozone transfer rule, right, just a couple weeks ago, or just a week ago, which will have a significant negative impact on the state of Utah and the energy. It basically says your coal power plants have to be shut down by end of 2026. That's 3.5 years away.
Yeah.
Has to be shut down. Like that, it's just impossible, right? So we funded a whole bunch of money to go out for federal lawsuits. We passed some legislation saying, no, these are the policies that before you can just shut down our one, you can't, because we don't believe that you should be able to just come in and put rules on us that would shut down our main source of energy. But before we got to have dependable, dispatchable, reliable energy at a decent cost, right? I mean, that's the things that we need to be focused on. Most of us are good with some of the renewable energies out there and believe that that's probably a good thing, to add as much energy producing technology and abilities that we have in the state and the nation. That's a good thing. It needs to be all of the above. But we've seen what happens in California, right, when they rely too much on renewable energies, and they have the blackouts in the summertime when they can't produce it during peak times. Texas, when the ice built up on all the solar panels in the windmills, and they ended up with not just blackouts but long-term power outages. Like, we got to have a brain through this process. Yeah. We can't just go shut down our coal-powered power plants and not have something in the wings. So, we're working hard to transition over to nuclear energy.
Yeah, these molten salt reactors. Yeah. There's a trial going on in Idaho right now, and then one in Wyoming that Utah's involved with.
Yeah.
So,
but it's like 7 years just to get the permitting, and then you're like 4 or 5 years to build the thing. So you're 10 years out before you can even really have and so we're going through that process. We're starting that process right now. We're working with Rocky Mountain Power, who's been a great team player in all this. I mean, they came to us, said, we got a big problem with this OTR coming out. We cannot meet the requirements and still provide power for the state of Utah. So that's what got our attention. So we're on a good trajectory there. We will push back on the feds all hands on deck on this.
Right. Yeah. It'd be nice if we had some way to speed up that permitting process. I know, we a few years ago we passed this sandbox rule on the regulatory environment, right? But unfortunately that doesn't cover some things like the nuclear power plants. And I know we have to be cautious, but we can't make things happen when government gets in the way.
Yep. No, that's absolutely. Keep government small and keep it out of your way.
Yeah. So what were some of the other highlights that you?
A couple other things I have down here is that, as you know, the transgender surgeries and for kids, sex changes for kids under the age 18. I mean, again, you come back to really think that's a reality. You really have to have legislate those types of things. But, and then the puberty blockers, a lot of new data coming out the last year on how bad and how harmful those puberty blockers are for our kids and our teenagers. And so, as you know, Senator Kennedy did a great job working with Rex Shipp in the House and
Katie Hall.
And Katie Hall. We passed a bill that does away with sex changes type surgeries.
On minors. Yeah.
On minors. And puberty blockers on minors.
Yeah.
So
that was
big. That's something we've talked about that for 4 or 5 years, or 3 or 4 years, anyways. But again, I think that comes back to, at least for us in the House, this new caucus, this freshman class was
really good.
They were good.
Another thing I think about, because I was the Senate sponsor on a resolution that Representative Wilcox ran on the railroads.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. You guys had you had like, was it 4 bills that came on that? I can't remember.
Yeah, I think there was 4 or 5, including Senator Owens had one as well. And 4 or 5 on the railroads.
Yeah.
Yeah, they treat the state of Utah and our municipalities like crap. And they walk all over us. Unfortunately, they have a lot of federal protections, so there's not a whole lot we can do.
Right.
But that was the resolution.
Was basically to call on our delegation in Washington to do something.
Something. It got Union Pacific's ear.
Did it?
Oh yeah, it got their
I
ear.
know you had worked on that.
Yeah, it got their ear, and they were trying to push all the maintenance crossings. They still are. Like right now, Union Pacific pays for the crossings on the maintenance. Well, they're trying to push that onto the taxpayers of the state,
right,
to pay for the crossings, for their crossings, for the railroad tracks. Well, that's not fair to the taxpayers of the state. So we need to stand up, draw some lines. Another stupid rule that they had is, if we went to widen one road, just widen one road. Keep in mind, we're the fastest growing state in the nation. We're going to have to widen a whole bunch of roads, right?
Right.
But just to widen one road, we have to shut down 3 other crossings. Like, that's just not even feasible. So we have literally instances in the state where we have 4-lane, 5-lane roads built, next down to 2 lanes to cross the railroad tracks, and then winds back out. Tell me how that is safe. And you know why? Because we can't get the approvals from Union Pacific to widen them, or they're holding us hostage, trying to get us to pay for the maintenance.
Right.
We'll pay for the state will pay, or the local jurisdiction, whoever it is, will pay for the construction to widen that. That's probably their responsibility. But it's always been the railroad's responsibility to pay for the long-term maintenance of that crossing, and they're trying to push that onto the state of Utah and its citizens, and that's not right.
Yeah. What were some of the other ones that you were?
Election integrity. We had that audit done of the 2022 election and the processes that were in place. It was a year-long audit. It went back and looked at the 2020 elections, and it was really a good, in-depth audit. Our auditors did a fantastic.
Well, and I think that's something that the citizens don't necessarily know a lot about, but the legislative audit staff, I don't think people realize how effective that is.
And if you want it'll make you smile. Go read our Constitution about how much authority, our Utah Constitution, how much authority the legislative auditors have. I mean, they have full authority to do whatever, and as it should be, right? That's what keeps government in check. Well, we've never.
Yeah, because you pass a law, then you ought to make sure people are following.
Right? Or just make sure they're being efficient with the tax dollars, or whatever it may be. And but we've never routinely audited our elections. We routinely audit every area of government. Why would we not routinely audit our elections? And so that was one of the recommendations that came from the audit. I passed the bill on doing routine audits of every general election and a process. So it would include primaries, and then and then there was 22 other recommendations that were out there. In the audit that we just had completed, and most of those all got addressed and implemented. So, trying to make it better. We're lucky in Utah. We really don't have a massive problem like you see some of these other states that do. But we need to keep it that way.
But we've been doing mail-in elections for a long time. Yeah. And, the first year you do that, you really discover that there's a lot of problems with the voter rolls.
Yeah. Well,
and I'm glad that they've been addressed.
That's one of the things the audit pointed out was there needs to be a better job done on the voter rolls, give some recommendations on how, and it will be better. It will be better going forward.
So any other ones that you can think of?
Well, this is, tax cuts. I mean, a total cumulative tax cut, $850 million when you add everything. It's huge. I mean, the largest tax cut in the state's history before that was $250 million. So to get all the way up to $850 million of ongoing tax cuts. This isn't one-time rebates, right? And it goes all the way from, property tax, income tax, gas tax, sales tax on food, all of the above.
Right.
I mean, it was all across.
Yeah, I think that I think that property tax one is one that didn't get out too much.
No.
Which I thought was really important. Although the state only collects a small portion of, but I was glad that we made an effort to.
Well, and it was a big dollar amount.
That back.
It was a big dollar amount, but we talk about every piece of property in the state. It's just a small. The largest portion of property tax, I mean, everybody knows this is the locals, right?
Right.
Whether it's your school district, whether it's the counties, whether it's the cities, or whatever. But it's the locals. They most of the property tax falls within them, but the state does have a very small portion of it, and yeah, that was
Well, and the cut to Social Security too,
Yes.
expanding that that floor to 75,000 now, right?
Yep, 75,000. So yep, if you make below 75,000 with Social Security, you no longer have to pay Social Security taxes.
You know, I've heard a lot of feedback about the people are kind of upset, especially the union and some of the other organizations statewide with this scholarship program, the school choice thing.
Yes.
That was $42 million, but we gave an increase of almost 900 million, was it, for education?
Yeah.
Record, right?
It was a huge amount.
Along with the record amount for teacher pay.
Yes, $6,000 increase in
going to
compensation.
Yeah. I mean, we had a huge increase for them last year, and I don't think it really made it to the end of the road the way we were hoping. This time, it's going directly to the teacher. Yeah, so we talked a little bit about the school choice bill,
Yes.
but what we didn't mention was the record funding for education.
Yes. Yeah, no, it was a record year for education. $6,000 salary or compensation increase for every teacher in the state.
Right, directly to the teachers.
Directly to the teachers, bypass the districts.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we wanted to make sure, as a legislature, that money actually made it to the teachers, because we have made huge increases in education funding for the last several years.
Yeah.
Well,
since I've been in there, there's been close to $3 billion in new funding.
And new funding for education. Well, and it makes you wonder, and I know in some school districts a lot of it does make it to the teachers,
right.
But in other school districts it doesn't make it to the teachers, and so we wanted to make sure that it actually made it to the teachers.
Well, and the year before, it was a percentage increase, right? Yeah. So teachers at higher levels of pay were getting a bigger increase, and I think where we were really concerned with was new teachers coming into the profession.
Yeah.
And making sure that we could get those average salaries up to the national average. Yeah. And what's interesting is we're above the national average now.
Yeah. No, we needed to make some investments in our public education. And that's one of the things I like most about the school choice bill is it did both. It gave parents the freedom, and it made a huge freedom to choose for their kids what they feel is best for their education. And then again, it made a huge investment into our public education system.
Yeah, and I got a lot of feedback. People saying, "Well, you're just stealing money from the education." That wasn't. We didn't take any money from them. In fact, we gave them over $600 million in new funding.
Well, and if you look and you really understand how funding does, how it works for education in the state, and you look at how this bill was drafted, if a student leaves the public education system and goes and takes the scholarship and goes somewhere else, it leaves more money in the system with fewer kids.
Right.
Not all of the money follows the kids. Only half of the money follows the kids. The other half money stays in the classroom for all the other kids. So it actually increases the per pupil spending.
Right.
And of course, nobody wants to talk about that, but that's the truth.
Well, Mike, we appreciate you coming in. We're about out of time.
Yeah.
And so any parting thoughts?
Well, I just appreciate the opportunity to come. I really think the world of you, Kevin, and appreciate the opportunity to be here. I'm excited. This year was a great year. Next year's going to be another great year. Really, I think what happened this year, really, if you're conservative in the state of Utah, you should be very proud of what happened this year.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. And we'll see you guys next week.